Hey there guys, and welcome back to Ripped Apart. This is a continuing saga, unfortunately. These stories probably will never end. Today we'll look at 3 stories about parents being ripped apart from their family. We dive into some real stories from real people. The unfortunate thing is, once a family is ripped apart, there's usually nowhere else to turn apart from the people that have already been ripped apart. And all those people can say is, don't worry about it. Let's get into it. We have 3 stories. In August 2023, so fairly recent, in the UK, in the aftermath of fleeing a violent relationship, a mother found herself in a new nightmare. With determination etched into every line of her weary face, she sought refuge several miles away, hoping to leave behind the shadows of her past. Yet her escape was fraught with fresh challenges. Her ex-partner unleashed a relentless barrage of false allegations and reports, accusing her of abusing their son. Despite her protests and the scars that bore witness to the truth, social services turned a blind eye to her suffering, choosing instead to side with the abuser. As she sought solace in a hostel, her past trauma echoed through the halls, painting a portrait of pain and resilience. But even in the face of adversity, she refused to be silenced, gathering evidence of the abuse inflicted upon her and her son. However, her efforts fell on deaf ears as social services dismissed her pleas for justice, gaslighting her into believing she was the perpetrator. With a heavy heart, she complied with their demands to send her son to his father's care, believing it was the only way to protect him. Yet the decision proved to be a cruel twist of fate, as her son never returned. 7 agonizing months passed without a glimpse of his precious face, leaving her heart shattered and her spirit broken. But amidst the darkness, a flicker of hope. With every breath, she vowed to continue the fight for her son's return, to reclaim the love and the life that was stolen from them. For in the depths of despair, she found the strength to rise. In this case, it seems OP has been dragged into battle, and into a battle they were not expecting. And the OP was literally forced into acceptance. Social services offered zero help or support to ensure the children stay with their parent. Again, they didn't help. There's no date or location to be shared with this one. I simply can't do it. Amidst the tangled web of misunderstandings and miscommunication, the narrative unfolded. Some years ago, a brush with law enforcement drew the unwelcome attention of social services, alleging involvement of both father and son in an armed incident, a claim later debunked. Stemming from an outdated social care file, initially the children remained untouched by the system's grasp. However, a resurgence of involvement ensued when familial tensions bubbled to the surface. The grandmother, harboring resentment over access to her grandchildren, orchestrated a setup, incriminating the son. Her objections stemmed from restrictions imposed due to concerns over substance abuse and questionable company frequenting her abode, where she once overdosed whilst looking after the children. Yet assistance was not forthcoming. Instead, directives to seek refuge elsewhere were issued, citing the mother's health condition post-brain surgery as grounds for the evacuation. Despite the father's need for reprieve from the son's mental health struggles, the mother was pressured to vacate when confrontations escalated, leaving the son unchecked. Attempts to secure respite were rebuffed, and coercive measures loomed as the social workers sought an involuntary sectioning without ensuring requisite support. Accusations of drug use surfaced, fueled by misconceptions regarding the mother's weight loss, while the social worker's negligence and deceit persisted, omitting vital information and even condoning underage marijuana use. In a tale marred with bureaucratic incompetence and familial discord, the protagonists navigated a maze of false accusations and unmet promises, their plight emblematic of systematic failures and the erosion of trust in the very institutions tasked with safeguarding vulnerable lives. In this case, we once again see a helpfully unhelpful approach from social services. Not only were the actions less than beneficial, the sectioning of a parent ensured they could not care for their children, so the actions were the reason for destruction. Social services assumed the mother's weight loss was thanks to drug abuse, an accusation backed by nothing other than assumption. This has literally been a running theme. Social services are there to help, but all they have ever achieved is destruction. In 2020 in the UK, in the dimly lit hospital room, I lay in bed, weak and weary from weeks of fighting for my life. The doctors had warned me that pushing myself too hard could lead to dire consequences, but I never imagined it would land me in this hospital bed. Separated from my children, it all started with a desire to keep my home spotless for my kids. I spent hours on end scrubbing the floors until my hands ached, unaware of the toll it was taking on my health. The ambulance ride to hospital was a blur, and before I knew it, I was confined to a hospital room for what felt like an eternity. During those agonizing weeks, I only saw my children for a mere 10 or so minutes each day. My ex was supposed to take care of them, but when the school called to report my daughter as missing, I knew something was terribly wrong. Panic set in as I repeatedly dialed his number, but there was no answer, ever. Then came the devastating news. He had been arrested, and my children were taken away. Frantically, I tried to explain that the messy state of the house was due to hospitalization, but no one seemed to listen. Social services accused me of neglect and insisted that I voluntarily place my children in care. Refusing to give up, I discharged myself from hospital against medical advice. Desperate to retrieve my children, I raced to the social services offices, but they had closed for the day, leaving me stranded and helpless. Days turned into weeks as I fought tirelessly to prove my innocence, but the system seemed determined to keep my children away from me. Despite my pleas and efforts to comply with their demands, social workers twisted the truth and painted me as unfit. They ignored my cries for justice, accusing me of lying about the abuse I suffered at the hands of my ex. Even the judge and the guardian ad litem turned a deaf ear to my pleas, condemning my children to a fate of forced adoption. In the end, the truth was buried by a mountain of lies, and my children were torn from my arms. As I sit here, haunted by the memories of what could have been, I vow to never stop fighting for my children. Even if it is in vain, the decision has already been made. In this case, OP was forced to take a back seat due to the hospitalization, and their ex made sure the school had concerns. Social services got involved, and it seems a decision was made incredibly quickly. And no matter what OP said or did, they couldn't change their already made up minds. It seems social services buried the truth, and lies became the only thing being heard. These stories are from real people going through real issues, and the unfortunate thing is, after a family is ripped apart, the parents are left with less family and the pieces to pick up anyway. They can scream and moan all they like, but the only people that listen are those that have lived it. And those that have lived it can only say things like, it gets better. The really sad part is nobody wants it to get better. They need it to be better. They need their children to be better. So that's everything from me for now. But rest assured, this will not be the last story you hear of a mother or father feeling and being ripped apart. See the description for a way to send me your story.